So you beautiful people, welcome to another episode of my Gunsmith series. Now with Season 1 being launched, we have new weapons in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. This is the G36 LMG, which is actually the MG36 from Heckler & Koch. Now the clue's in the name to what gun we're actually going to make, which is the G36. Now the MG36 is essentially a G36 with a heavier barrel for increased cook-off resistance, although it's no longer in production. Now the variant you may have saw before is the one in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which would have a singular barrel like this with the bipod. Now we're going to change this into the G36c. So the first thing we are going to need to do is obviously shorten this rifle, and the easiest way for us to do this, well the only way really, is to change this to the G36c's 9-inch barrel. So what options do we have? We have a ultralight barrel here, but we're going to go for the FTAC 8.98 inch Spitfire, which is very close to the 9 inches that is required. Now this in terms of pros will give you aim down sight speed and movement speed. Now the MG36 is a very cumbersome weapon. It is LMG, so you are going to move significantly faster once you attach this particular barrel. Now the cons are evidently bullet velocity and recoil control, but this is not really going to be a problem because we're not really going to engage in extremely long range fights. This is more for an aggressive playstyle, so let's attach that. Now next, we obviously need to get rid of all that ammunition in terms of those barrels, which do make this weapon look like a male's nether regions quite rudely. We're going to put on the 30 round mag with the 5.56 NATO rounds. They're 5.56 by 45 in the G36c. So we're going to attach these. I will say I'm very disappointed that we don't have the transparent cartridge that usually comes with the G36. I don't know whether this is down to any types of legalities, licensing or royalties, but or even if it's an oversight by Infinity Ward, who knows? But unfortunately, we're just going to have to attach this bog standard looking 30 round magazine, which is one of my favorite parts about a G36. We're not going to go for it on the barrel today because what we're going to do is compare this to the MG36 LMG and see the differences in between them with no grip. But if you want to put a grip on, you're more than welcome to. We're going to put on stipple grip just to get the aim down sight speed and sprint to fire speed even faster, so we can be even more aggressive with this weapon. And in terms of stock, we're going to put on the FSS infantry just for additional movement speed. Now that is already looking like a very, very aggressive weapon. And then finally, just to give it that more classic look, we're going to put the Corp Combat Hollow Sight on, just to give it that old school, reminiscent, memory lane look from Call of Duty Modern Warfare series. So the Modern Warfare 1s and the Modern Warfare 3s is where you would have saw the G36, and that is already looking like a glorious weapon. So let's go and test this bad boy out and put it up against its LMG brother. So the first thing we'll test with the MG36 is the recoil pattern, and as you can see, it snakes off to the right. Pretty predictable, but it is definitely going to take taming. So movement is quite cumbersome, but you would expect that from an LMG. Reload speed is not too bad. Aim down speed seems to be okay. As you can see, we can tame the recoil. You may want to progressively burst your shots just to bring it back down at a level that's manageable. We're hurt currently, so as you can see, if you want to put in work in terms of shooting, it's going to be quite easy to take on a lot of enemies at one go. Be much better once this weapon does have attachments on, but it's not a bad weapon at all. You can move pretty decent speed. It's not as slow as I thought it would be for an LMG. So let's start with recoil on the G36c, and as you can see straight away, it's got a similar pattern, but it's much more aggressive. So definitely going to recommend a grip on this weapon if you're going to run it like a G36c. So let's put this bad boy up against some actual enemies in the actual game. And as you can see, movement wise, I'm able to move significantly faster. Can be so much more aggressive because of the aim down sight speed with the weapon. And the recoil isn't actually that bad. Yes, you're going to have a bit more difficulty tracking enemies at a long range. But these are things that we could easily negate with a grip on. So I'd probably take off this sight that we've got on at the moment, go for the standard stock iron sight, and then utilize another attachment in terms of grip. Now personally, me, because of the style of weapon that it is, I always tend to opt for the Merc grip because you can get a bonus for shooting off the hip with that weapon, and this is looking like a weapon that you'd be able to, as you can see throughout the footage, utilize shooting people off the hip quite often. So it's very, very nice, very aggressive, and I'm definitely going to recommend this as an alternative, a worthy alternative to the MG36. It just allows you to play so much more aggressively, and for me, that's the traditional way to play Call of Duty, is to be very aggressive against people. So that is the G36c in action. Now our next weapon that we're going to build should really not need any introduction, and this is in the season pass as the Ram7. Now you should think to yourself straight away, that looks like a Tar. And it does, but it isn't quite a Tar at the moment. Now, this weapon is made by IWI, Israel Weapons Industries, and this is the Tar. There are so many variations of this weapon. You've got the Tar-21, the C-Tar, the M-Tar, the Star. But to make this a true Tar-21, we're going to need to change the barrel to a 460mm barrel. So that is the XRK Ranger. Now it doesn't look much like we would be familiar with because it's got this enclosed barrel, which is fine. I understand what they're trying to do here. They're trying their best to make these weapons look realistic but far enough away from them so they don't get copyrighted or whatever it is. Now, although the handguard seems unfamiliar to us, it is a modification that you can get in the real world. But now we do have what would be considered a Tavat Tar-21. Now, what would I put on this weapon also that I would recommend to you guys? Well, first of all, I like the close quarter stock to be used on it. In terms of the ammunition, you can put on a 45 round mag if you really want to, but it's not something that I would tend to do. Rear grip, I really do like using the stippled because it just gets you down sights much faster, and the sprint to fire speed is faster, but you get a slight penalization in aim stability. Now, I will tell you straight away, this weapon does handle very, very nicely indeed. And we're going to go for a change on this one. We're going to go for recon, so enemies' nameplates come up at a longer range. Because it's an assault rifle, you will be able to pick people off from a longer range, especially considering we've put the Ranger barrel on now. And if you want to optic, you could opt for one, but I think the optics are very, very clean on this weapon, and that was something that I really like to utilize on the original Tar-21 anyway. So the last thing I would probably put on is going to be, I'm going to go for a suppressor on this weapon, and we're going to go for the monolithic suppressor, which is sound suppression but increased damage range, and this is just going to be a brutal weapon. I just can feel it already. So let's go and test it out. So naturally, we'll test out the recoil first, and as you can see, very manageable. Veers off to the left, which is quite unusual in this game, but there's not much recoil in reality. Remember, we don't have a grip on this weapon. So the first thing I've noticed with this weapon that I'd recommend you change straight away is I would sacrifice the perk and I would go for the extended magazines. I'd go for the 45 round magazine because, as you probably noticing during the gameplay, the fire rate is totally immense on this weapon. It is really fast, so you're going to run out of weapon ammunition very quickly. And I'd also recommend you use either the ammo box like I'm using now or scavenger, because you're going to have difficulty if you're not picking up ammunition getting it, because you will deplete it very, very, very quickly. But overall, very, very fast killing weapon, even at range. I mean, we've still got no grip here, and we're still shredding our enemies. I really like this weapon. I'm really grateful that they've actually put it in the game. It's brilliant. It is brilliant. So many different variations you can have. Again, wouldn't recommend putting any type of sight on it. I feel like these iron sights are probably the best iron sights in the game at the moment. It's just so clear to use. Very clear to use. Very fast. Killing weapon also. With the silencer, you'll be keeping yourself off the map. So that is going to be my class setup in terms of the Tar-21. So guys, you need to tell me out of these two builds, which is your preferred? Is it the G36c or is it the Tar-21? In terms of looks, I would definitely say that the G36 has stolen my heart. It's one of my favourite weapons out of Call of Duty. However, I am slightly annoyed that we don't have a transparent magazine. But in terms of which one I would recommend to you to utilize in game, it has to be the Tar-21. It just feels like the better weapon in terms of the movement, in terms of the user friendliness, the recoil, and the time to kill. It is definitely, in my personal opinion, the better weapon to use. So guys, that is the video. Hope you've enjoyed it. There are many buttons you could hit, but a like and subscribe button, I hope they tickle your fancy. And as always guys, don't forget to stay on the right track. Peace.